You are Locked On Wolves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Minnesota on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
T-Wolves take care of business at home in the backyard at the Target Center. They beat the Jazz and they secure the top 6 seed. Ant with 43 points, by the way, as well. We'll get into that. Final score, though, today, 116-105. What's going on? Back in the lab, back at it. Another T-Wolves Postcast episode right here on the Locked On Sports Minnesota Network. Your team every day. Jack Borman with me, as always. Give him a follow at JRBorman13. Jack, I'll try to make this quick. I know you're watching Rory versus Justin Rose at Augusta, but you know, for the Wolves here, I mean, they can't all be double OT thrillers every night. You know, we joke about that a lot, but Wolves win a game they're supposed to, and more importantly, they lock up that all-important top 6 seed today.
Yeah, no question. That was the only goal, really, today, was just for the Wolves to win the game by any means necessary. Doesn't matter how pretty or how ugly it is, and they certainly got that job done. And you know, now we've got a tie game in San Francisco that will determine whether the Wolves will play the Lakers or the Nuggets. So we'll keep that updated over the next few minutes.
Lots to get into from this one. Today's game MVP, biggest turning point, what we'll be talking about tomorrow morning. Plus, again, we're going to be deep diving the playoff picture now that the seedings are starting to settle a little bit. But first, quick reminder, today's episode brought to us by Game Time. Game Time, download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. All right, so again, T-Wolves just need to take care of business today against a bad Utah Jazz team. Utah didn't even want to win, right? They want a top 5 pick in that lottery draft coming up this June, but a little bit of a sweat in the first half, I guess. 1-point game at halftime, 60-59, and then you get a 40-point third quarter explosion. That helped ease some of the tension at the Target Center, and they close out strong in the fourth quarter as well. Anthony Edwards, 43 points. Rudy Gobert, man, continues to shine. 19 points, 18 boards, and again, the Wolves beat the Jazz. Final score, 116-105. Bottom line, like big picture too, we always start with this. They took care of business, beat a bad team, secure this top 6 seed that I think, Jack, 2-3 months ago, if you told a lot of fans or whoever it may be the Timberwolves did secure this top 6 seed, a lot of people would have said, no way, that's nuts.
Yeah, they very well could have. And I think, too, that's just where, you know, the Wolves also, you know, had played a tougher schedule at that point than a lot of these other teams had. And, you know, did good work to make sure that, you know, they finished, what was it, 17-3 or 17-4 over their last 21. So certainly just a good close to the season for the Timberwolves, no question about it. I think for them, it's, again, you can't really focus on, you know, who's in front of you. You just got to go out there and take care of business. And it's, you know, pretty funny that, you know, 3 of those losses were abjectly horrible losses coming down the stretch of the season. But, you know, again, you just gotta get enough of those wins to make sure that you're in the top 6 and then just kind of get into the playoffs and let the chips fall as they may. And, you know, certainly that's kind of where the Wolves are at right now. But yeah, really nice to see both Ant and Rudy step up in major ways in the most important game of the year.
Yeah, well said. They're 16 games above 500 as well. This is the first time they've been 16 games above 500 all season, by the way. 49-33. That's their final regular season standings, if you will, for this season. Oh, when you think back to like all the turmoil, all the drama, all the early struggles trying to mesh so many new faces and new places together that this team really had to start the year, and then it continued with a couple big injuries as well. Again, if I were to tell you they ended the season 16 games above 500 and ended with 49 wins, I know it's not what a lot of people predicted before the season, but what would you have thought if I would have said that again, halfway, maybe 2-3 months into the year?
Yeah, I would have said that was a great recovery and that they must have, you know, made me look a little better than they made me look at the start of the year, right? You know, I thought the Wolves would go over their win total of like 52.5. Just because, you know, I thought that they could be a more balanced team. But, you know, again, I think you got to give a lot of credit to Dante DiVincenzo and Julius Randle for the way that they were able to, you know, kind of turn around some of their early struggles and, you know, kind of settle into their roles and be really, really good players for the Timberwolves over the last, you know, really since both of them came back. I mean, especially for Randle shooting dang near 40% from three since he's returned from injury. So I think those two guys have a ton to do with it. And then, obviously everyone else staying healthy is super important. And, something that everyone obviously needed on this Timberwolves team. So huge, second half of the season for those two guys especially, and then again for Ant and Rudy to continue kind of growing in their respective roles. Ant as kind of the offensive engine, and then Rudy just really dominating on the interior, especially these last 2 or 3 weeks has been awesome. And yeah, Chad. I was just saying the chat is saying the Warriors and Clippers are going to overtime. So
that's incredible, man. Of course, it comes down. You play 82 games. Of course, Jack, it comes down to the final game, and then even 4 quarters isn't enough as well. I know all the chat, everybody in the chat is going to be hawking that scorecard down. Scorecard. I got Masters on my man. I'm sorry. I apologize. Let's get to the MVP, player of the game from today's matchup. Again, Wolves win this one versus the Jazz, 116-105.
This is the Locked On Player of the Game.
All right. Who was the game MVP? Who was it, I guess, and why? Again, 116-105. Who you got? Lay it on us.
Yeah, I think you can go one of two ways here. But again, I know that we've talked about in this program several times the importance of, when a team just doesn't have it, just having someone that kind of steadies everything and lets everyone else catch up to them and get it going. And for me, it's got to be Rudy Gobert, because again, Rudy, 19 points, 18 rebounds, had 10 defensive rebounds, 8 offensive rebounds. I think just the defensive intensity that he played with in the first half of this game, especially, allowed the Wolves to go into the locker room with a lead where I'm sure they absolutely got lit up and torn to shreds by this Timberwolves coaching staff, for the second game in a row. And so for Rudy, especially the way that he forced, tough shot after tough shot on the interior for Utah was really important. I mean, Utah shot 47% at the rim, which is awful. Again, league average is right around 66.7%. And so for him to hold them to 8 of 17 at the rim was awesome. And then you even want to look in the short mid range. For Utah, they took 26 shots in that 4 to 14 feet range. Again, a sign that they just couldn't get all the way to the rim, and so that was super important. Rim deterrence too for Rudy, and I think again, Ant, no question, we'll get into Ant, was awesome in this game. But you have to kind of remember that that doesn't Ant's explosion. I don't think necessarily happens the same way that it does if Rudy didn't kind of keep things steady, because again, I think, Rudy prevented that game from being, an 8, 9, 10 point Jazz lead at different points in that first half. And then I think what happens after that is guys have to start pressing and, you just start hunting certain shots. And I think, again, the high ball screen action with Rudy allowed, Ant to just kind of get downhill and kind of change that tone in the third quarter. So yeah, again, I know people in the chat are referencing that Rudy missed quite a few bunnies, but again, for Rudy, still, I just think it was more about the defense and what he did as a rebounder in this game that I think kind of raised the floor to a point where then, Ant's ceiling shattering, offensive skills were able to take control.
All right, plenty more deep dive from this one, including the biggest turning point of the game. That's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, today's episode brought to us by FanDuel. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, an official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Right now, FanDuel is giving you a chance at a huge return, $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed when you win your first $5 wager. Why I love FanDuel: when you get the hunch in the middle of the game, you can go check out the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more, all on the same page where you're placing your bets. Again, $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed when you hit your first $5 wager. Go check it all out over at FanDuel.com. Plus, get on some NBA future action while you're there. T-Wolves 12-1 right now to win the chip, to win it all. It's all sitting up over at FanDuel.com. Again, check it all out over at FanDuel.com and get $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed when you hit your first $5 wager. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, an official sportsbook partner of the NBA.
Time to reveal where the game was won or lost. It's the turning point.
All right, biggest turning point in today's game, Jack. Where and when? I mean, this was, again, a 1-point ball game at halftime, 60-59.
Yeah, I think for me, you got to go back to the third quarter of this game, right? Things were kind of not necessarily coming off the rails a little bit, but, Jaden picks up his fourth foul. Chris Finch benches Julius Randle and Mike Conley at the 9-minute mark, 3 minutes, at least 3 minutes before when they normally come out. And then went to Ant a little earlier as well, which I thought was pretty important. And then, Ant kind of checks in and immediately just starts to go downhill and start to impose his will physically on the interior of the Jazz. I think the way that he was kind of dancing on the perimeter with Johnny Juzang and then, just kind of getting to his strong hand, I thought was really, really important. Had 3 straight attacks that resulted in scores either for himself or other people. And so the way that he was able to just draw the full attention of the defense and then just be able to finish and make plays, I think was super important. And Ant led the team on a 25-14 run to end the fourth quarter, and you could end the third quarter, excuse me. And you could just kind of see, the intensity totally flipped for him when he checked back into the game at that third quarter. And I thought it just showed a ton of leadership from Ant that would be, something that everybody just kind of wanted and needed to see from him. And again, on that 25-14 run to end the third quarter, he had 16 of those 25 points, accounted for 18 of those 25. He had 18 points, accounted for 20 of them. He had 18 points on 7 of 9 shooting, and did not have a turnover in that third quarter. So I think, again, he just, when he puts his foot down and totally gasses it and gets everything out of his game that he can, it's totally incredible to watch. And I just thought that the team totally needed somebody to step up in the way that, Jaden McDaniels and Julius Randle and, Mike Conley and Nikhil were all kind of struggling at different points. So it was really, really big for him to take that and just kind of run with it.
Where are you at with I know where you've been, but is there anyone out there that is still left that can bash the Rudy Gobert trade at this point, Jack? I mean, you've kind of walked us through today, but the last 3, 4, 5 games, the guy's on a tear, and I guess just the impact he's had on this team. When you look all the way back to that trade and everything he's been through and the impact he's had on this team, good moments, bad moments, everything in between. I guess, how do you evaluate that trade now at this point today?
Yeah, I think it's pretty hard to argue the fact that the Wolves have come out ahead in that trade when you consider that, the Wolves also made, I don't necessarily know if you want to then lump in the deal that they made that same February, right? Trading for Nikhil and Mike Conley.
I don't think they make that move unless they have Rudy, though.
Yeah, so I kind of like to lump them together.
I would.
But even if you don't, I still think, again, Rudy helped get you to the Western Conference Finals, helped establish an identity of this team, helped unlock another level out of Anthony Edwards with the way that he was able to set screens and clear all these runways for Ant and that little handoff action to get Ant help him reach another level as a 3-point shooter this year. I think it's kind of hard to argue against the Wolves winning that trade, especially because the only prospect the Jazz have gotten that has shown them even remotely anything so far out of that trade is Walker Kessler. I think, Keontae George is a guy that, I think has shown some flashes, but I don't really think is a guard that, you can bank on as this is the guy that you're turning the keys to at point guard for the next, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. So I think, looking at it at this point, it's hard to argue. And then when you loop in that other trade, it's pretty crazy considering that, I think that other trade also got them, they trade for Nikhil, Mike, you get Leonard Miller eventually out of that trade, but I think they also get the Jazz's unprotected second this year. I can't remember if that was from the Rudy trade or if that was from that Mike and Nikhil trade, but that's going to be the best pick in this. That's going to be 31 in the draft, which is a super valuable slot considering that, super valuable spot considering that, the rookie scale is all the first round picks. So there's a lot of teams that really like to have those early second round picks so they can kind of get creative with some of those contracts, especially now that there's a second round pick exception that they've had kind of factored into this new CBA in terms of, ways that you can go over the, salary cap and luxury tax to sign different players, early on in their careers as rookies. So super important that the Wolves were able to pull both of those deals off, and kind of fitting, I guess, that that they get into the playoffs once again this year, going up against the Jazz.
Jimmy Butler just had a goaltending violation. James Harden put those down for 2 points. Clippers up 4, 121, 117, 114 left in this first overtime. I know everybody's watching that, and the Masters right now, obviously, like a hawk. Is there anything else? I do want to spend a good chunk here in segment 3, obviously, about the playoff picture. Again, you talked about Lakers, Nuggets, what it's all going to look like, but any final miscellaneous notes, any kind of rapid fire through today's game you want to touch on before we get to the playoff picture next? Any deeper dive, fun analytics, any stats that stuck out?
Yeah, real quick. I think you got to shout out Nickeil Alexander-Walker, all 82 for the second season in a row. I don't know that he's missed any games since he's been traded to the Timberwolves, which is certainly an accomplishment, and I think speaks to why every Timberwolves fan loves Nickeil Alexander-Walker and hopes that he's back next season, because again, best availability is, or the best ability is availability, and especially when you're going up against, when you're playing against. When you're playing alongside guys like, Mike Conley and Rudy and, Randall, all guys who have missed, some decent chunks of games throughout their careers. I think it's super important that you've got guys that can play. And Jaden McDaniels this season also played all 82 games for the first time this season. It was the 4th season in a row he's played at least 70 games. So I think, for those role guys to not only be pretty effective night in and night out, but to be available night in and night out is super important. And then again, just good to see the Wolves kind of flex their muscle again. 16 offensive rebounds for 24 second chance points tonight. It was really important too. And then, something that we can kind of get into, as we talk about potential playoff opponents here, which right now looks like it's going to be the Lakers. But I just wonder if the Wolves want to still roll out with Mike Conley in the starting lineup instead of Dante DiVincenzo, especially if they end up playing the Lakers. So that, I think, will be something to watch.
All right, last segment coming up. Again, you're going to spend 5-8 minutes here on these playoff seedings. Again, potential round 1 matchups, Lakers, Nuggets, who will it be? That's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, today's episode also brought to us by BetterHelp. When your schedule, it gets packed, work projects, kids, whatever it may be, it's so easy to let your priorities start to slip, even when we know what makes us happy. But when you feel like you got no time for yourself, non-negotiables like therapy, they become more important than ever. If you've been thinking about starting therapy, maybe it's time to give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, and it's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited for your schedule. So simple. All you got to do, you fill out a brief questionnaire, you get matched up with the licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Go visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today. You're getting 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, just knowing what you know right now, with the way everything's set up, with this team, which teams are playing who right now, vice versa, et cetera, walk us through both potential matchups. T-Wolves versus Lakers, T-Wolves versus the Nuggets. Pros, cons, all that stuff, and which way you're leaning. Like the Mike Conley DDV bit versus the Lakers. Those are the Nuggets I'm looking for. No pun intended there.
Yeah, I think everyone kind of knows what that Nuggets matchup is going to entail. They've played the Nuggets about 1 million times in the last calendar year. But yeah, I think we can focus on the Lakers just because I think that's a pretty interesting matchup, considering that the Wolves have played the Lakers, I think 4 times this year, but none of them have come. None of them have come when Luka and LeBron were healthy, playing against a fully loaded, Wolves team. So I think that that's going to be super important to watch, just because I think you've got 2 guys in Luka and LeBron that can just totally pick a defense apart 6 ways from Sunday. And, the Lakers will very clearly try to hunt, whoever it is out there on the floor. And we all know what Luka Doncic has done to Rudy Gobert. But the good news is, like, I think, you can match some of the physicality with LeBron, with Julius Randle, which I think is important. And then again, I think, Austin Reeves is just a huge wild card in this series. I mean, he's very, very quickly become probably the best third option in the NBA. I mean, he's averaging like 26 and 4.5 this season, and has done an excellent job of, it's just excellent job of just kind of playing off of those two stars. And on nights when either of them have been out, he's kind of carried the load offensively. And so I think, the Wolves have to be able to, match what Austin Reeves has been able to do, whether that's Dante DiVincenzo or, really Dante DiVincenzo, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and Naz Reid have to be at minimum the 4th, 5th, and 6th best guys in the series, or 5th, 6th, and 7th, if you want to include Rudy in there as well, because the Lakers are going to have 3 of the 4 best guys in a potential series. And that's like nothing to slouch at. And I think for the Wolves, it comes down to, can Anthony Edwards, totally dominate his individual matchup, because Dorian Finney-Smith or Rui Hachimura are likely going to guard him. Rui's a little bit bigger. Dorian might be a little quicker side to side, but again, I think it's a really good matchup for Ant, considering that the Lakers just don't have super consistent rim protection inside. So really for the Wolves, I think it's just going to be about how can you maximize what Anthony Edwards is able to do offensively. And then, can you keep Rudy Gobert involved? I think Rudy Gobert has been so good for this Timberwolves team over the last 3 weeks or so. And I think they have a real opportunity to play big against them, against the Lakers, and see, can we play big better than the Lakers can play small? Right? If the Lakers, have Rui Hachimura and LeBron in the front court, and they don't have a true center out there, I think that's going to be super interesting to see, because, again, the Lakers 3-point shooting has kind of waxed and waned as a team. And I think they've got a lot of guys that, can fall in love with the 3 a little bit too much, with Luka and LeBron too. I think, maybe we'll see those guys go downhill a little bit more, because it is the playoffs. But again, I think Timberwolves paint defense is going to have to be really good against those 2 guys. And if you can win in the paint, and Ant can kind of win that, individual matchup with Luka, a couple of times throughout the course of the series, I think, the Wolves certainly have a shot. But I think if you're a Wolves fan, you're definitely hoping that Golden State is able to pull this out over the final, 30 seconds here.
The playoffs don't start till April 19th. Obviously, you got the play-in games before then, but how nice is it, I guess, for this Timberwolves team to get those 4 or 5 days off to rest up? But also, when you look at the Nuggets and Lakers, any potential injuries, or either of those teams a little bit more banged up right now than the other? Did Rory make a putt, or what's going on? Like,
no, I'm trying to think of those 2 teams. No, I mean, I think the Lakers have been relatively healthy. I mean, LeBron kind of potentially popped his groin again. Okay. JJ Redick said he was fine after their last game, but I certainly think the Lakers are probably a little bit more fragile. Okay. But again, either way, I still think that, getting a week off is super important, independent of who you're playing, because it allows, these guys have all built up different nicks and bruises and ailments over the course of an 82 game season. So for them to be able to, get this week off and practice and get an extended, time to think about Luka and LeBron and how they want to attack that matchup is going to be super important.
What other matchups just around, could be the West, but around the whole league, the East as well, what other matchup just kind of intrigues you on paper that, just as a fan of the NBA, you're kind of excited to sit down and watch?
Yeah, I think Rockets versus Golden State will be really interesting. Just because I think it's just kind of 2 teams that play a very different style of basketball, and how the Warriors try to fend off Şengün, I think would be super interesting. To have them play more of a post-centric game against the Warriors, and try to put Şengün in space, and how the Rockets try to solve for that, I think will be really interesting. And then I think, can the Clippers finally break through a little bit against the against the Nuggets. I think Zubac versus Jokic is going to be a fascinating matchup inside. And then when you think about kind of, Kawhi versus Michael Porter Jr. and Aaron Gordon with Norman Powell, and then Harden versus Murray, I think there's a lot of fun individual matchups in that series if these results hold. So I think I'm so much more focused on the West. I just think it's going to be, way more wide open, and I think all these more matchups are a lot more even than what we have in the East. Because I think anybody would just be shocked at this point if the Celtics don't come out of the East. But I guess we'll see what happens with Jaylen Brown's knee. I know he's been dealing with some issues with that, but we'll see what happens. I think we're in for a really, really fun first round in the West.
Oh, I can't wait, man. I just absolutely can't wait. By the way, 6.1 seconds on the clock. Clippers up 3. Golden State timeout. We'll see how that one all shakes out. Again, Masters getting down to the wire as well. Can't wait to go watch that. A great Sunday and just a great time of year for sports, man. Just had March Madness. A big NFL draft guy as well. Absolutely love this time of year for sports. T-Wolves take care of business. Secure that top 6 seed. Ant-Man goes off, 43 points. Final versus Utah, 116-105, 49-33 on the year. As always, huge shout out to all you guys, all the everydayers out there that always make us your first listen. All you guys coming in the chat with us from game to game. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. Please go follow Jack. This is the best time of the year to go follow Jack at GR Borman 13. Usually live from the Target Center, more games than not. Again, playoffs start April 19th, a couple days off here. Schedule will be out as these playing games kind of conclude. So when that happens, rest assured, we'll catch you right here. Same time, same place. But until then, signing